Amy Aston, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate everything you've been doing. I've been following you on Instagram and checking you out, and you've been through a whole lot. How are things going right now for you?
Not the best at the moment. I have definitely taken a few steps backwards. I am in the midst of quite a bad flare, which has kind of taken me back to the middle of last year when I was going through the height of TSW, and it was horrible. But my mental strength since then has just is grown so much that I think now I'm thinking, I can get through anything. There've been dark moments over the last couple of weeks, but I'm like I always come out of them so much quicker than before. So not doing the best, but I'm okay.
Yeah. That's one theme I've noticed with people with TSW is their resilience just gets absolutely sky high. As like even when they're going through the worst of it, they've already committed to not taking the steroids anymore. They're done. That in itself is so courageous, and I commend you and everyone else in this community for it. How long have you been going through this? I know some people kind of their journeys are very different than mine and many others. So what's going on?
Yeah, so I've really been going through it for quite a few years, but I wasn't aware of TSW. Well, I was aware of it before I started using steroid creams, but I've really just been going through TSW, like completely off steroids since the beginning of last year, so beginning of 2024. Um, before that, I was like on and off. I knew steroids were bad, and I'd obviously then heard of TSW not long before I stopped using them. But really, I've only been going, I've been on this journey for like, coming up to a year and a half. But, and like you say, it's so different for everyone. I speak to loads of people who have been on this journey for like 6 to 10 years, and then some people who are just starting the journey. But you're right, it's so different for everyone. Um, I thought I was really coming through it, and obviously I've had support of like the drugs that I've been on from a dermatologist. But yeah, it's crazy how different everybody's experience is.
It is, and you just mentioned how some people are going through this for like 6 to 10 years, and I think that's really hard for people, especially those who know nothing of TSW, to even fathom how someone could go through that for that long. And it brings up a question I actually really am curious about you with is the relationship between how long TSW takes with how much they used. Like I've heard how long you've used it, what potency you've used, and how much, like in terms of grams, you've used on your body, where you used it on your body. There are all these questions that haven't yet been figured out.
Mm. I know it's so interesting because I've heard loads of different. Well, I haven't heard many different things, but I've heard that it's the potency you use, how long you've been using it for, the longer you take out to come, the longer you take to come out of TSW. Um, and like I can, from my experience, I've never sat down and worked out how many grams I've used because I just can't. I can't bring myself to doing that, and it's over 34 years of use, and not and different potencies over that time. Quite strong ones, obviously, towards the end. Um, and I seem to make some like a rapid recovery at the kind of back end of last year. So I was thinking, oh, my journey, is kind of like coming to an end, or I'm coming through TSW. But as I could, as I've found now at the moment, I think I'm going back into it again because I've come off the drugs that I was on before, starting a new one, and I think it's kind of rearing its head again. Um, so I don't have the knowledge. I'm only can only go off what people have told me, but I kind of have, I am understanding that the stronger you've used, the stronger stuff that you've used, the longer you've used it for, the worse it is. But I've also heard of some people who have said that they've used it exactly as their dermatologist or doctor had prescribed it, and they're going through it despite using only a very low dose and not for very long. So I don't know. I don't know how true that is. I think there needs to be obviously like far more research to figure out what the kind of trajectory, if you like, or what happens. Yeah, it's the unknown, isn't it? That's frustrating.
The JP Touchette podcast is brought to you by Compadre. Love every walk. Do you have a strong and willful pulling dog? Well, not anymore. Compadre, the makers of the patented no-pull solution, have created a humane harness and leash system to help train against pulling and lunging behaviors. Compadre believes that you don't have to hurt a dog or break their beautiful spirit in order to get them to be good citizens on a leash. Gentle corrections around the strongest part of a dog's anatomy, the chest, means that you can guide and train your dog without painful pinch collars, e-collars, or choke chains. This system helps you to gain your dog's attention and lead them to walk calmly beside you. And if you use promo code JPT2025, you can get 10% off your order. And I can tell you from experience, you'll be glad you did. Seriously, guys, I have actually had a chance to try this myself, not on me, but on a big dog with a huge personality and a lot of energy. And this is a legit product that I actually believe in, and I believe in the owner's mission as well. This is an excellent company, and if you want to change the way that you are walking with your dog, this is the way to go. So if you want to see why dog trainers, pet owners, and vets love Compadre, then visit compadre.com. That's COMPAWDRE.com. Thanks, y'all. Peace. Yeah, I think that's the next step. I'm sure you're aware of the paper that came out of the NIH that's talking about berberine and talking about the excess of NAD plus on the skin. And that's awesome. But like you just said, we still have people who are going through it with lower doses, with less time, with less grams of the actual product itself. And then you have, some people, like, I don't know if you've seen this before or if it's happened to you, you've been on the news where someone will come out with their story and then the news will show someone who's like, I don't know what that person's talking about. I've been using really strong glucocorticoids for years and I'm totally fine. Mm. And maybe they are, right? Like, so what is it in a person that makes them predisposed to TSW? We don't know that yet. But
yeah,
how about this, Amy? I'd love to ask you. You've been on and off of, I think it's Dupixent and then immunosuppressants. How do you feel about that? Because I know there's a big debate on whether or not to use them. I personally didn't want to touch any of that stuff. I just wanted to go cold turkey. But I think for the audience, it's important to know that their personal journey, if you will, I'm not a big fan of that word, but might call for something different. Like if they're in so much pain and that helps them along the way, what do you think? What do you think about that?
I think you're right. You've like hit the nail on the head about it being so personal. I think it is such a personal choice. I personally would rather go cold turkey. Like I do think that all medication, like pharmaceutical medication, there are going to be side effects. Some of the newer stuff, we obviously don't even know the long-term side effects of that yet. I know they can do a lot of research to kind of predict it, but I think obviously lots of research went into steroid creams. But then again, there is talk about that they knew that these were going to be the side effects and it still was prescribed. But I digress. So I think personally for me, I would rather not be on any sort of medication. And as I was coming off Dupixent, my skin was doing really well. And I was like, right, this is it. This is my chance to just go cold turkey, absolutely natural. I'll do everything I can naturally to help. And then it was 2 weeks before my dermatologist appointment and I just started to flare. I had a massive flare. It was stopping me from just doing daily activities. I've got 3 children and it impacts them. Giving them hugs, I'm kind of jolt away if I'm going through a flare and it's involuntary, but it impacts them. So for me to be on medication, it's kind of just giving me that little bit of a lifeline, that little bit of respite to kind of go, right, just live a little bit more freely and then work on things kind of behind the scene, or just, I just want it to give me a bit of a helping hand at the moment because, I know I'm not old, but obviously not getting any younger, and I just want to enjoy life. And I think that's for me why I made that choice, because I just think, you don't know what's going to happen. Like I could literally be hit by a bus tomorrow. And then what have I done? I've spent this whole time, these past like the year and a half, just like in so much pain, when there is something out there that can give me that little bit of a boost. But I would always want to do research. I looked a lot into methotrexate, and I know there are lots of side effects, but I'm hoping to just kind of maybe keep it to a lower dose just to give me a boost, and then, try to do things naturally. So yeah, I think it's like you say, it is such a personal decision. You've got to base it on, haven't you, like where you're at in life and what you're able to do. I guess things like being a teacher as well. I can't work from home and be flaring. I've got to go to work, and that's really difficult. If I'm like unable to move because my skin's so dry, it's like,
Yeah.
What have I got to do to help myself in that moment?
You bring up such a good point, because I think there's a big part of this community that are much younger, and they're still able, many of them, to go live with their parents or another relative while they're going through this. Maybe they can start a GoFundMe, but is a completely different story if you, like yourself, are a parent and you have to support, you have to go to work. What I went through was horrifying, but I cannot imagine other people depending on me while going through that. And I think it's really important to highlight that you do have some choices. If that's your only way to go through it, is you have to support others. Yeah. And I think we have to have, if I came home from war and I had PTSD, I would hope that my government in America would get some sort of program to let them have time off and give them a stipend to help deal with what they're going through. If an individual, especially a parent, especially a mom, is going through that, I think there should be a government stipend for them to help them go through it. Especially if an upstanding person like yourself, you're a teacher, you're a provider, like there's no reason in the world that we can't funnel taxes into that,
Yeah.
But that's just, I don't know, maybe that's wishful thinking.
Yeah. I'm incredibly lucky that I work for, I'm working at a public school. So, I'm able to have time off. Like I get a certain amount of time, which is very near to the point where they're going to have to having conversations with me. But I am supported in that. I get paid time off. Whereas, people who are self-employed, they don't have that. You're right. There's nothing there to support these people. I was recently talking to a lady who's a childminder, and she's, had to cancel and ask them not to bring their children to her. But that's her income, so she just doesn't get it. And there's nothing, kind of not that I'm aware of in the UK that supports that for long periods of time. And yeah, I think, I do think myself very lucky. I think that's the thing. It's just, we need to raise awareness of this. Like you say, there needs to be something more support for people going through this. Because it is a thing. It is definitely a thing.
If there's anything the audience can take away from this, it's that TSW is a thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. It's a thing. It's not just eczema. And yeah, I absolutely agree. I think people have to have that awareness so that they can see what it's really like. And the people who have some power get some empathy and go, we got to do something. This is happening to thousands of people. But in order to do so, with the awareness, and I think this dovetails perfectly into my next question, is if you wouldn't mind, could you give us a bit of a roadmap, a bit of a character arc of how your TSW has started and how it's been going kind of from the beginning, how it's impacted you, how it felt, what the realization moment was.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, like I said, I was aware of TSW before, like probably a year before I actually went and decided to stop. And my skin was pretty bad, and I could kind of see that addiction. My skin, it was craving for the steroid creams again almost. And then it got to the January of last year, and it wasn't just like not helping anymore. The steroid creams, when I was putting them on, they were burning, and then they were making it even more red. It was like they were making it worse. Um, and then, in fact, no, my face did start to swell a little bit before I stopped taking them. But I just thought at that point, when they were not helping me, they were making things worse. I thought, right, I'm not doing this anymore. Like TSW, it must be real. I've got to stop and see what happens. And then within 2 weeks, my whole face was just like round. I was so swollen. My whole neck was swollen. The rest of my body parts were swollen a little bit as well. I kind of described myself as a burnt hamster, which that's how I think I look, which is awful, like a really bad way. But
Oh man.
if anyone can't see, will not have the chance to see photos of me, if they just think of that sort of like really fat face and like look like a burns victim, I felt like that's what I looked like. So yeah, not the best description, but that's what happened. And yeah, so they ended up in hospital because the hospital thought, I rang like the helpline over here, 111, and they were like, we think you've got sepsis, you need to go to A&E. So I went to A&E, was treated for sepsis, but it wasn't sepsis. It was just something obviously going on with my body. All my allergy markers were really high, and the doctors just did not know what to do. I was in there for 5 days. They tried to tell me to use steroid creams, and I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm absolutely not doing it. And I was only discharged because they got me an appointment with dermatology. I held out. Oh, actually, that's when everything kind of went a bit viral on my Instagram, because I posted kind of like a frustrated Dear Diary thing that was me after the dermatologist, with them just dismissing me and not really offering much help. So I managed to hold out until about a week later, after my daughter's first birthday. I was like, I'm just going to stay out of hospital because I knew I had to go back. I was in so much pain. I wasn't able to do anything. There was just so much going on. And yeah, a week later, I ended up back in hospital again. I'd actually gone to speak to the biologics team, and they were like, you need to go to A&E. So I ended up back in hospital again, another 5 days. And it got to the point where I was really struggling. I was in a very dark place. And as much as I was, again, refusing to use steroid creams, the only way to get out of that hospital, I ended up taking oral steroids, and like looking to taper off. And it was just so against my wishes, kind of, or not against my wishes, because obviously I then decided to do it. But it was that moment of desperation where I was like, I can't carry on like this. My children are at home. I can't just sit in the hospital with them doing absolutely nothing. So I ended up going on steroids, and then finally got Dupixent. And that was when things really helped. Things got better because the Dupixent was helping. And then, yeah, just kind of it improved over the next couple of months. But then I was suffering with kind of like facial flares, which were not going away. So it's kind of been a bit of a rough roller coaster still, even on that Dupixent, but it did help me a lot. Just trying to think if I've missed anything else out of like that part of what happened. But I think that for me, Dupixent was the turning point. I don't really know what would have happened if I'd have carried on like I was, because I just didn't know what to do. There was like no advice apart from obviously like online. Eczema obviously were an amazing charity, so I was getting advice from places like that, but even they don't really know the perfect advice, like, here's the steps to take to heal yourself. Nobody knows still. So it's kind of, yeah, that's why I started on Tupixing. Because I was just a bit like, I just need something to help me because I can't carry on like this.
And from the beginning, were you one of those people who had eczema as a child? Like, what were the steps along the way that led to you knowing, oh crap, I have TSW? What were those?
Yeah, so I had eczema as a baby, and my mum took me to the doctor, and they obviously just prescribed steroid creams. So I've been using those for my entire life. Um, so yeah, up until when I stopped using them, that was like 34 years of use. Um, and I suppose as a child and even my teens, I didn't have any symptoms like of TSW. I don't think. Like looking back, trying to think what my skin was like, I think it was really just eczema. Um, and I don't really know what the turning point was. I mean, maybe that I was on another medication as well the previous year before it all kicked off. And maybe that had something to do with it as well, that made it even worse because obviously, like I was kind of suppressing. I was on Rimbock, and I don't know whether that was kind of like playing a part in suppressing things a little bit. But yeah, that like the turning point was around that Christmas. I'd had a very stressful couple of months as well. Like my nan died and my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was almost returning to work after maternity leave, which just, felt a bit stressed out about. So I think the stress played a massive part, and none of the medication could really help that. But yeah, like the turning point I think was around that Christmas time, but I don't know what triggered it. I don't know what, apart from the stress, maybe that's the only kind of indication. Like, well, not indication, but like the reason why it might have flared so badly. But yeah, I have no idea what that turning point was. Like I don't know, lots of people I speak to, they're worried. They say, if they're still using steroid creams, I want to stop using them, but I'm afraid this is going to happen. We still don't know if it happens to everyone, and we don't know at what point, that kind of switch happens. Because like I say, I've been going through my life the whole time, just eczema symptoms. So yeah, absolutely no idea what that turning point was.
Yeah, I feel that's another common theme. Is I know with myself, with Kit, with you, with many others, there's a set of events that lead up to something happening, like some sort of really stressful event. For me, it was COVID, and I got a little bit of eczema inside my elbows, and then immediately went to the doctor and got on the cycle from there. But I think with people such as yourself who had been using the glucocorticoids for 34 years, it's really hard to pinpoint this. And I know at 15 I was using this potency, and then at 18 I was using that potency. And that's why I have this extreme frustration with this immediate pouncing by the doctors, because that's their training, to immediately give a person glucocorticoids. And I've one of the most frustrating points I've had is when I've been talking to some friends and they go, oh yeah, I almost use glucocorticoids, but my doctor said, nah, you don't need those. You should just, have more nuts and get more sunlight and do this. And, in your life, I see you doing this pattern, so you should maybe be careful about that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like it really, like all it took was the doctor to look at the person's patterns of life, what's going on with them in a holistic manner, if you will, and make changes that way. And this notion that you need to just take something to just go back to work, shut up,
Yeah.
whatever gets the symptom, whatever stops you from complaining, we're going to give you that. And I need to go to my next patient because I don't have time. That it really breaks my heart. And I just wish I wish we could change that. That's one of the main reasons why I have this podcast, is just so people can realize that and look at someone like you and me and go, I don't want to go through that. I don't want to
Yeah.
go through that. So I'm going to look at something different,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right that it's like it's amazing that you do your podcast, because and other people who do other things like Brianna, she's doing the documentaries and all of these things. And I
Yeah.
think we kind of we're preaching to the choir with the people who have been through it or are going through it, but we need to reach out further. It needs to be the people who haven't had this experience, but we need to give them that knowledge and create this awareness, so it's more voices. We can't just do it, us that are going through it, we can't just do it. It's got to be everyone, and kind of that refusal and questioning, and having the courage to say to the doctors who just want to, on to the next patient, just say, look, can you just spend a little bit more time with me to work out what it is. You're absolutely right. It is so frustrating. I think that's one of the things for me when I've seen medical professionals before. My dermatologist is a bit better now, but I've seen dermatologists or just doctors who are so dismissive, then they just don't want to know. And I think that's the thing for me. Like, be open minded, want to investigate. It's I don't know. It baffles me. I think, why would you not want to? If you can see that there's something happening, want to make a difference. So yeah, so
Well, yeah, I
frustrating.
mean, I think I said this on my last podcast, and I think I've been criticized for saying this, but screw it. It's just, isn't that part of the Hippocratic Oath, is do no harm
Mm.
and to help people? I mean, to me, if I wanted to be a doctor, like, I don't know if you've seen that viral video when there was this little kid and the person with the microphone comes up and says, what do you want to do when you're growing up? It's like, I want to be a doctor. It's like, why do you want to be a doctor? It's like, because I want to make people feel okay. And I was like,
Oh,
I mean, it got millions of views because it's just,
yeah,
that's like at the core, I think, of what a doctor goes to school for. They want to help people.
yeah,
And I think there's something not just in the medical community, not just in the scientific community, but just overall they don't want to know. I mean, wasn't it, I'm not a big fan of Christopher Columbus, but I heard that, he wanted to go on his expedition. People are like, that is absolutely crazy. That the world ends over that horizon. Are you nuts? Don't even try. And he's like, no, but there's information. Shush. We know for sure. We know absolutely for sure. And I don't know, maybe it's hubris, maybe, and it's tied to your identity. Maybe you've worked hard. You spent, in the US at least, you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on your education. And you're like, well, I was there. I read the textbook. I know better. And you're trying to
yeah,
tell me through Google that you know better than me. And it's like,
yeah,
yeah, we gotta change that. We gotta
yeah,
change that.
definitely.
That childlike curiosity is so important in any human being. I don't care if you're 5 years old or you're 50 years old or older.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
totally agree with you there.
There are definitely people out there. There are definitely doctors and dermatologists that obviously are great for this, but it's not enough, is it? You're right. They're just reading the textbooks and getting on with it, and yeah, it's not great.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned earlier, it's great that we're doing these podcasts. It's great that there's documentaries, but we're not appealing to outside of the TSW bubble, or maybe we're breaching into the eczema bubble. I'm asking for some sage advice. How do you think that we as a community could tap into more people? I know with Itzan, I managed to get a resolution in my state Senate. That's one step.
Yeah.
I mean, do we need what do you think? How do we do it?
I don't know. This is quite a question. I don't know. I just think we've got to kind of do these big things that are going to make the movement. They're going to create these bigger waves. But I mean, I don't really have many ideas. I mean, I try, through my social media to kind of reach out to different areas. So obviously, my page it did start off obviously as like a skin a skin page, but I try and just talk about my whole life, to, kind of get other people invested in things, and then raise that awareness. But I just don't know. I have no idea. I mean, events and, inviting people along, I don't know, trying to contact like bigger names.
Yeah.
There's celebrities out there that, people keep popping up, don't they? That, oh, I've got this and this eczema and this eczema, and it's kind of everyone's coming a bit more clean on. They haven't got perfect skin. I can't remember who it was the other day. The model, the actress who's in Mamma Mia. I feel really bad that I don't know her name, but there was a video that she did not like a couple of days ago, and it was her showing her skin and saying that she'd got, eczema. But it's like, I suppose, educating those so that they've got like louder voices, or, a wider audience, maybe trying to get it out that way. But
yeah, I every single celebrity I hear that has said they have TSW, I immediately reach out to them. I'm like, hey, please come on. You're going to help a lot if you do. So far, no luck as of yet, but I think that probably would help as well. Yeah, I think what's really good, a good sign to me, is that there are people out there who, let's take a celebrity, for example, who have really big voices, and they're going through this. They feel that something is wrong, and all they have to do is pick up the phone and look up, why am I feeling this? Why am I? And then, oh crap, what's TSW? And when they do, boom, they have this whole world pop open to them, and they see, holy crap, that looks exactly like me. That doesn't look like eczema. That's not what I was used to. And then it hits them. I think that's really cool. But yeah, and then I think my second point to add on is some sort of advocacy program for kids to advocate for themselves in the doctor's office. Because me personally, even now, I have a hard time advocating for myself, but a child, like I did a podcast with this mother from Hawaii whose little boy went through this, and I'm holding back my emotions right now just trying to talk about it, because that little boy could not advocate for himself. And if we can stop that, or if we can find better treatment for eczema itself, then maybe we don't have to rely on glucocorticoids. But it's like, it seems like I'm not going to change the world. I can add a little piece to it, and if we all add our little piece, maybe we'll get there. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. Just keeping doing what we're doing at the moment, and hoping there's some big idea out there that's going to come to one of us. But yeah.
What do you find that's been helping you? I mean, you said you've had little bursts of healing. What are the, just for, I guess, for the benefit of the audience, and what do you find helps you? What do you find that hurts you? And then maybe I'll add on to that after, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think one of the things, like quite an expensive purchase, but I do really rate it, I think, is my red light device. I think there's quite a lot of research out there at the moment that kind of, it suggests that it helps lots of things, not just skin conditions. And it also, like, that gives me time to just kind of relax. I am forced to just sit there and I usually try and do a bit of mindfulness with it, or reading of a book, sort of thing. So I think that's really helped me. I think I know lots of people are all for like no moisture therapy, and I think there's a time and a place for that. So like at the moment, what I'm going through, I'm trying to put on like one lot of moisturizer after I've showered or had like a very quick bath, and then that's it. I'm trying not to put anything else on it. But I think some of the more natural like moisturizers that haven't got all the chemicals and things in have been a lot better for me. But again, it's kind of knowing what your skin is craving at that moment, because I know my skin at the moment isn't craving moisture. It needs to kind of like, it does need to dry out a little bit and the new layers come through. And I'm saying things like that as if it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but I've no idea, to be honest. I'm just trying to. It's just what I've learned over the last like year and a half of my skin is
Mm.
like crying out for different things at different times. Um, so I think I guess in a way that's one thing that's helped me is to kind of try to understand my own skin a little bit more. Um, and I guess like I mean, diet plays a part in it. I don't believe like that's a cure. I think you could still have a really great diet, and there's still going to be triggers because there's going to be external things. Um, but yeah, just trying to like I say, when I'm going through a flare like this, I try and go back to really clean eating, knowing the foods that make me trigger me, and trying to do it that way. But yeah, I think those at the moment, those are the things that I try and look out for. Just but like I say again, I'm not even sure what the best things are. When people ask me that question, my heart does always start like pounding a little bit because I think I don't want to be like influencing people to do the things that I'm doing because they might not
Mm.
work and they also might not even be working for me. But it's just trying to work out what's right for you. I think that's the most frustrating thing, that we're all different as well. So I could be saying one thing and it'd be just totally different for someone else. But yeah.
I think that's a very good point. That's something I've struggled with because the few people that have reached out to me and asked me questions, I'm like, on the one hand, do I give them this advice that I feel really, really helped me, that I got from, the CAP clinic in Thailand or something, or my traditional Chinese medicine doctor
Mm.
thing? And I'm like, okay, do I give that to them, or do I just say, do whatever feels good for you? And I think what I found in the middle is just say, here's the information from experts in the specific TSW field. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach back out.
Mm.
Because, you talked about moisturizer, and this is a big, big thing within the CAP community, is they're very much against using anything
Yeah.
on the skin. And that is really tough for people, especially, getting out of the shower and then your skin just turns into stone and you're like, this is unimaginably painful. I need to put
Yeah.
something on my skin. But you add to people this anxiety of, if you put on this cream, you could be making it worse. So you don't want people to be anxious either way. But I think providing that information and then letting them do what they want to do at the end of the
Yeah.
day is good. And yeah, do you find that how do irritants play a role in your with your TSW right now?
Yeah, I think in quite a big way. So I have changed things like, my laundry detergent, um, all things like that to try to just be like eco-friendly with no fragrances. I can't wear perfume. That is a massive trigger. Even things like my bedding. I've got this amazing bedding that's got like a silver weaved through it, which helps with the bacteria. And I've literally had that for like probably over a year now, and it was really helpful. Um,
Nice.
yeah, so it's things like that, but yeah, like animals. That's a massive environment in the environment. I love dogs, and it's kind of changed my relationship with them as well, which is awful. Like, we had a dog and decided to kind of temporarily rehome him. And it turns out like he's got such a good life there with the people that he's with now. Um, but
Okay.
yeah, it's the environmental factors definitely play a part. Um, it's just pinpointing exactly what it is. Could be there for ages trying to work it out. Um, so I'm slowly but surely like figuring out what actually does impact me.
Here's something I'd like to ask. I'd like to say this a lot because I found it to be incredibly helpful for me even today. One of the best pieces of advice, too, that I ever got was, when you come back home from being anywhere, immediately go into the shower. And for
Yeah.
me, I still can't handle hot water, so I'll do cold water and just immediately get off any sort of outside irritant. And then the place that I'm living in, we don't use any harsh chemicals. So then I'm cleaning off. I'm immediately getting into this little like homeopathic quarantine zone. And I found that sweat for me just wrecks my skin. So I come
Yeah.
home, immediately take a cold shower, pat dry off, change clothes, and then I'm good. And then the other thing, this was both of these pieces of advice were from the CAP clinic from Thailand, but the other was, if I wake up in the morning and my skin is red and inflamed, that means that perhaps something in the middle of the night was flaring me up. But if I wake up in the morning and my skin is less red, a little bit more pale, that means that maybe I'm doing a good job. Have you noticed patterns with that? I'm actually curious to see if that's a universal thing or if that's an individual thing.
Um, yeah, I guess my day is set with my skin the moment I wake up. I think I think I can have like a flare like halfway through the day if I've touched something, like a dog or things like that. But you're right actually. I've never really thought about that. Um, it's something definitely to consider, like I think yeah, that how I wake up in the day in the morning. Yeah, you're right. That's what my skin's going to be like for the rest of the day. So it's interesting to
Mm.
think that there's maybe something happened in the night that yeah, like I've been too hot or like I always sleep with a fan on now, but it's
Huh.
yeah, that is interesting.
There's so many little tricks that the CAP clinic has. I don't know if you're aware of like their TSW guide. I call it the TSW Bible personally, but there's a lot of tips and tricks there that don't involve any pharmaceuticals that I found personally to be crucial. But again, like I don't want to come from a high horse because I'm just learning from them. But I
Yeah.
just whenever I see anyone with TSW, I'm like, when I talked about how doctors pounce on people with glucocorticoids, whenever I see someone with TSW, I'm like, look at this website now.
Yeah, yeah.
like, um, yeah. That and the other thing I think is super underrated when it comes to TSW is the rest of the body. Because if you're messing with the hormone with synthetic cortisol, you're messing with the rest of your body. And I
Yeah.
remember with my TCM doctor, she gave me herbs and I looked up the translations. They were in Mandarin and I looked up the translations. I'm like, that's for the liver. That's for the gallbladder. That's for thermoregulation. Oh,
Mm,
whoa. And so
yeah.
for me, I really wish that at some point people go to a doctor and they go, okay, here's what you're coming home with. You're coming home with, appointments to the CAP or whatever. And here's clean bed sheets. And you now have a TCM doctor and they're going to give you herbs and they're going to build you from the ground up. I don't know how you feel about that, but if I was a trillionaire, I would give that to everybody with with TSW.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a whole body. You have to deal with everything. I mean, even that for like eczema and other skin
Yeah.
conditions, I guess we're not just talking about TSW there. I think we're talking about, anybody with some sort of sensitivity needs to kind of deal with it holistically and, just try and, I mean, I know stress is a massive trigger for me. Um, like I say,
Yeah.
the beginning of last year, I'd obviously gone through a very stressful time, and I can tell, like I'm actually going through a bit of a stressful time now as well. Like kind of finalizing divorce things, and that's probably playing a part in it. Um, and yeah, I think I do work with a hypnotherapist, which
Mm.
I know like we've touched on obviously over messages, and like she is so great. The the tools that she's equipped me with are for life, and it just helps so much with she's kind of like she started off working on my skin, to kind of do this like this healing waters session and like imagining my skin healing and things. But then it's kind of just progressed onto like a confidence in life that I've got control of my life, and knowing that whatever path I take is the right path, and that I can rely on myself to make those right choices, and all of the things like that. With the mind, I think it is so important. Yeah, because all the herbs and things work really well with different parts of the body. I think moving on from that is working with the mind as well. I think that plays a big part.
That's an excellent point, because I've totally forgot you mentioned you went to a hypnotherapist. That's something I've been very interested in for different topics, but I would be really curious to see how that works with TSW. Like if there were, because can I ask you something? Do you ever have a hard time remembering certain things after TSW?
A little bit, yeah. I have moments like there that, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
forgetting my kids' names at school and things like that.
Yeah, that me too. I've noticed things. Yeah, like there are just things I should remember, or memories that I had before TSW that now I can't remember as easily.
Mm.
And I know that you can do hypnotic regressions. And I wonder, have you ever done that with your hypnotherapist?
I don't think
No.
so. Not in that sort of way. We've kind of worked. I've done one session where I've gone into like my past, like my childhood and things, but we've never really done anything like that. It's always kind of been more of a, right, what we're going to do to get you moving forward. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that is really interesting.
It's so fascinating to me how hypnotherapy works, or hypnosis works, because not to get too woo-wooey, but I do think that just the attitude of the person towards their healing, that can play a huge, huge role. And if you're somehow able to get to a more heightened sense of awareness with your soul and your body at the same time, you can feel every inch of it, and kind of, for lack of a better word, master that. Then maybe you can use that to your benefit. And you said she was mentioning things like, imagine your skin healing, this magical water and stuff. Do you find that actually helped long term?
I mean, possibly not like long term, but in that moment, it did take away like all sensations on my skin, and after, and I
Wow.
think, but I think it's, I personally, I totally agree. I think that there's so much to be said for the way that someone's mindset is about something, and what their awareness is, and how they can deal with things. I think hypnotherapy for me with my hypnotherapist is, she's given me these tools, and I think it's something that I need to be working on more and more. It's kind of like, that we talk about, you go to the gym if you want to strengthen your muscles. Um, and it doesn't just happen overnight. You can't just go to the gym session for like once and you're massive.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's about working on those things and using these tools more and more, so that your mental strength and your resilience is, that becomes, you increase that. um so yeah, it's, I think that's the thing. It's not just going to be a quick fix. I don't think one hypnotherapy session is going to cure TSW, but it provides you with those tools to help, with the healing.
Yeah, such an excellent notion, ideology behind that. I think is super important to tell people with TSW, who's their whole life they're used to going, getting a pill, getting a cream, feeling better the next day. I think it's one of the things my traditional Chinese medicine doctor told me is, like, you got to think of it like you broke a bone and we're putting a cast on there and we're putting a scaffold around your broken bone, and we're building the bone underneath the scaffold, and sooner or later we'll be able to take those scaffolds away. I think telling people that instead of yeah, cool, just give me the money and you'll go and get this treatment, you'll be totally fine at the end of it after years and years of damage. The other thing I wonder is, the people who are at the CAP clinic in Thailand or in the UK or in Singapore, them being together as they're going through it. They're in a community.
Yeah.
I know the people in Thailand, they'll go to like cafes together, they'll go to dinners together. I think that in itself is tremendously healing.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think a massive part of my healing at the beginning was the fact that loads of people reached out to me. And, I'm going through this and I felt so supported. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the online community is slightly different because I think in person is always better. As we've said before we started this, like the in-person podcasts are better. But I think, having that community around you, whether that is in person or online, is so important. To know that you're not alone, to know you're not going crazy, and kind of like, to bounce ideas and just be together. It does give you that kind of like internal strength. Comes from that support of others. Definitely. Really, really good point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're social creatures. We're just shaved apes, right? We need to be in groups. We've got that's in ancient tribes or just tribes anywhere. If the mother or father are not there for the kid, aunt, uncle, friend, they just pick up where the parent left off.
Yeah.
Like it's basically their kid too. And I love that idea. And I bet you can probably relate to this, but just having this podcast or telling people about what I'm going through, it kind of gives me a sense of purpose to try and help other people. And I think that's what you're doing with your page, with your Instagram.
Yeah. I think so. It definitely gives me that strength. And like I say, just doing this podcast, like there's a few things that you've said today, and I've been like, do you know what? I have got this. I've had some really dark moments recently, and I need to just remind myself how far I've come, and everything I've been through so far. And I think actually, sharing with people on the page and wanting to help people and think, right, well, this is how I feel right now, but how can I help myself? And then sharing that, it's great that I feel like I'm making a little bit of a difference. And from the beginning, that's definitely helped with my healing, and knowing that I've connected with others and they've helped me likewise. But it is sharing that information and raising the awareness is so important.
Yeah, you've absolutely got this. I mean, just the ability that you've been able to go as far as you have in the situation that you're in. I mean, that's a testament to who you are at your core.
Yeah.
And some of the people that I've met with I think just about everyone I met with TSW, they have that extra percentage. I don't know what it is that other people don't.
Yeah.
They're willing to get up every single day and keep going. Yeah. And it's a tremendously healing for me to see that. I mean, it keeps me motivated. And so yeah. I know you make a really big difference, and
thank you.
I just appreciate everything that you've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, there is so many people out there doing all of this as well. I think it's I don't know. I never really know how to respond to things like that. Like thank you for your kind words, and I wish that none of us had to go through this, but if we're going through it together, then that's, I suppose, connecting with these sorts of people. I would never have connected and done all the things that I've done over the last year and a half. So yeah, silver linings, as we've said before.
Absolutely. Yeah, the universe wouldn't have thrown it at you if it didn't think you couldn't get through it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, hey, Amy, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that healing finds you swiftly.
Thank you.
And comfort as well, you know, and everyone else listening to this, if you're lying in bed in the middle of the night and you're convulsing, I just hope you know that it's going to end.
Yeah.
It's going to get better, at least, if you just keep getting up, you know. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me
Thank you
on.
so
It's
much.
been so great to chat to you. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah, likewise. It's good to talk to another word that I find might be cringy, but another warrior, truly, you know,
yeah,
a mind warrior.
yeah, yeah. That might be what I refer to myself as now from now on.
Yeah, word up. Well, hey, you take care of yourself. I'll stop the recording here.
Yeah,
Peace.
thank you.